All right, here we go. Welcome into the Stone Shield Show. We are back. We are here. We are live. It is Tuesday, February 24th. Appreciate everybody out there making us a part of your day. Really does go a long way, and we greatly appreciate it. Lots of stuff going on here in the city of Cincinnati, all across all the sports. To be completely honest with you, big night in college basketball. We'll talk about that in a second, but obviously the NFL Scouting Combine out there in Indianapolis is underway. Head coaches, GMs already meeting with the media at their scheduled press conferences at their respective podiums in Indianapolis. And later this afternoon, Zach Taylor and Duke Tobin are going to be taking the podium to answer questions from local and national media members. And we will have you covered on tomorrow's show with a bunch of takeaways and reaction to those comments. But wouldn't expect anything crazy here. Maybe they will double down on some of the things we've been talking about the need for addressing the defense, obviously adding an edge rusher. But we'll keep our ears peeled and see if we get any noteworthy comments from Zach and or Duke Tobin. Tobin, of course, this is usually the first time where people really get a crack at him and can really get into his mind as far as what he's thinking for the upcoming season. A little bit different this go around as he addressed the media locally at Paycor Stadium at the conclusion of the 2025 season. Went out to the Senior Bowl, some comments there. That's more, informal stuff, right? Just kind of media scrums gathered around, asking him some questions. But we've kind of addressed the 2025 season, certainly with Duke Tobin, and it'll be interesting to see what his remarks are later this afternoon. But GMs, head coaches already meeting and having their press conferences already this morning. Of note, Johnny Spytek, GM of the Las Vegas Raiders, he has come out and said that he expects Max Crosby to be a member of the Las Vegas Raiders this upcoming season. Obviously noteworthy. We've been covering the Max Crosby stuff, so I think it's worth mentioning, right? Again, if you're talking about any one of these other NFL teams not named the Las Vegas Raiders, you should be talking about wanting Max Crosby and doing everything in your power to trade for a guy like Max Crosby. We obviously have done that here at the show as it relates to the Cincinnati Bengals, and kind of noteworthy that the GM has come out and said we want to hold on to Max Crosby. It will be interesting to see if that changes at all over the course of the next few weeks. Obviously, there's been some reporting that's been done suggesting that Max Crosby has played his final down with the Las Vegas Raiders and that he does not want to be a member of that organization next year, but we will keep a lookout on any developments there on that situation. College basketball, big tonight in the city of Cincinnati. How about the Bearcats? They're hot. Won their past 4 games. They are down in Lubbock this evening. ESPN2, 7 o'clock tip. 6.5 points is the margin for tonight. All the public is all over Texas Tech. I think there's probably some value there in the Bearcats. I mean, they're coming in. They're hot. Texas Tech, I believe this is only their second game without their best player, JT Toppin. Christian Anderson certainly going to have to be big for them. And you would think Cincinnati has an advantage on the low post as far as the front court goes with the size of Baba Miller and Mustafa Cham. Be interesting to see if they can exploit that advantage in the game tonight. But we'll preview it on today's show. Looking forward to that. And shoot, you win this game, you're on the bubble. As crazy as that is to say, but if you have a win against the number 2 team in the country on your home floor, Iowa State, you go to Fall Allen Fieldhouse and knock off a top 10 opponent, the Kansas Jayhawks, who, by the way, if you watched them play in the game last night, I'd say Bill Self had his crew a little ticked off about the result over the weekend against the Cincinnati Bearcats, but they handled Houston with relative ease at home. Huge win for the Bearcats this past weekend. Kind of all for nothing, I guess, if they lose tonight, but you can start the murmuring, you can start the chatter. If they can pick up another upset on the road in the Big 12 against a formidable opponent in Texas Tech, albeit without their number 1 player in JT Toppin, I think the rumors are going to start swirling a little bit, circulating a little bit about, hey, you know what, Cincinnati, they might not be out of this thing yet. And you look at their schedule beyond the game tonight, they had a tough one against BYU, but some favorable matchups down the stretch here for the Cincinnati Bearcats. Not predicting it, right, but just saying, there'll be a little bit of noise if they can pick up a big-time win tonight. And I think some of the people that maybe had checked out a little bit, hand up, I was one of them, right? You're going to keep an eye on what's transpiring on at ESPN2 tonight. But, of course, on your main TV, you're going to have what's on ESPN Plus as the Miami Redhawks look to keep their undefeated start to this season alive. Favorable matchup for them. Got to go on the road up in Michigan, Eastern Michigan, who, of course, knocked off Cincinnati earlier in the year. Maybe at the end of the day, that'll be what keeps them out of the tournament if they string together some wins here down the stretch. But they're a bottom feeder in the MAC, 10-18 overall record. Luke Skowjak, Peter Suter, Travis Steele, Ian Elmer, and company. They put that undefeated record to the test, and they're going to get the best shots from Eastern Michigan. This is their NBA Finals. This is their Super Bowl, so to speak. 10.5 points is the margin there. I'll talk about that game a little bit on today's show. And also Dayton in action at home against St. Louis. I understand St. Louis plays in a bigger conference and has played stronger opponents than Miami, but I mean, they've been ranked pretty high all year, too. And if Miami and St. Louis got together and played a ball game, give me the Miami Redhawks there in that spot. But Dayton, I think like a 3.5-point underdog in that matchup should be an interesting game. And I think Dayton's got some life there. That is a pretty significant home court advantage there at UD Arena. But lots of great area college basketball tonight. Looking forward to all of that. Some other stuff that we got to get to, Bengals related. James Rapines wrote some really good stuff recently for BengalsTalk.com. He's put together some 3 moves that he wants Cincinnati to make before free agency, which, by the way, the legal tampering period, that's about to open up here. Yeah, March 9th, and we're sitting here on February 24th. So this thing's really about to get rolling. 3 moves. I agree with all of them. We're going to break those down. He also has a trade proposal, which I think is interesting, and I'll just go spoiler alert here. It regards Trey Hendrickson. I think a lot of us, certainly me, have been talking about a tag and trade as it relates to getting a draft pick back for Trey Hendrickson. But what if it was a player in return for Trey Hendrickson? We'll talk about that on today's show. Daniel Jeremiah, he's got his top 50 NFL prospects going into the combine and obviously going into the 2026 NFL draft. We're not going to go down the full list, but I do think there are some noteworthy takeaways and a couple of guys that I don't think anybody are talking about for the Cincinnati Bengals at number 10, a guy that we've only mentioned a few times who, if a nightmare situation unfolds, which we're going to talk about that today as well. Joe Goodberry put this out on his Twitter. Hopefully we can get him on the show next week, talk a little free agency. But all the defensive players were off the board, and you're sitting there at 10, and Joe says on Twitter, can't draft back or can't trade back in this situation. What do you do? There is a guy that cracks the top 15 in Daniel Jeremiah's list that I would take in that spot if that situation indeed arose for the Cincinnati Bengals. Also, little NBA if we got some time to round out today's show. The Lakers, you look at where they're at in the standings, 3rd or 4th in the West. But it's fool's gold, I think is really the best way you could say that. They've got like 22 losses, 19 of which have been blowouts. I think in a lot of ways you go as your superstar goes, and your team kind of takes on the identity of your superstar there as well. And Luka's unbelievable. Talked about how he was involved with the worst trade in NBA history when Dallas Mavericks shipped him off for essentially a bag of peanuts, which to this day makes absolutely no sense. But can he really be the best player on a team that wins the NBA Finals? Obviously, he went to the Finals with Dallas before he was traded. But I don't know. Lots of complaining with the officials. Every year we come in here and say, oh, this is the year Luka's going to win MVP. I picked him to win MVP. Well, newsflash, he ain't winning MVP this year. So we'll talk a little bit about Luka and the Lakers to round out today's show. But appreciate everyone, as always, for being with us here. Off the bench, still kind of in a down spot. Reed Mouse, of course, our great friend here at Chatterbox Sports, recently had a baby. At some point, you're going to see a little bit more of Reed Mouse. I know the Chatterbox Bengals crew's kind of getting together, planning out some stuff. Again, hopefully we can have Joe Goodberry on next week, preview free agency. I know Craig and Reed, perhaps Casey as well. We'll hop on and have some conversation there. I do believe the plan is for a live show come draft time, which obviously is a ways away from now, end of April, but I believe that will be in the cards there as well. So some Chatterbox Bengals content going to be surfacing here in the near future, and I think you can expect to see our very own Reed Mouse. But subscribe, we're literally almost at 22,000 subscribers. We've been banging the table for a while, trying to get to that point. Go to YouTube, subscribe, really helps us out. Got to get to 22,000, certainly, hopefully within the next, 10 days or so, but got to be before opening day, certainly before we hit that mark. Speaking of the Redlegs, they're back in action today. Kansas City Royals, 3:05 first pitch. Don't think it's on TV. Maybe it is. Could be wrong there, but I would assume it's going to be on the airwaves of Fox Sports 1360. which you can find on your radio dial or, of course, the iHeartRadio app there as well. Redlegs looking for their first win of the spring, 0-2. Strong pitching performance in Game 1. Strong offensive performance in Game 2. Rough bullpen outing for those boys. Not exactly sure who's getting the ball today or if that's even available information here at this point, but I know our guys will have you covered with some thoughts after the game and a podcast there as well, which, by the way, once the regular season's here, you're getting a podcast every single day on Chatterbox Reds, the #1 Cincinnati Reds podcast in the world. As always, like the stream. If you're seeing the clip on YouTube, like that as well. We greatly appreciate it. Let's start with the Bearcats. They're in action tonight. Texas Tech on the road. Lubbock looking to get another win as they go on this hot stretch here. Just took down Kansas over the weekend. It didn't just take them down. Went to Fog Allen Fieldhouse and kind of abused them, right? Kind of took them out to the woodshed. Really created some distance there the last 5 or so minutes of that basketball game. And they had like an 8-ish lead, 5 to 8 points, something like that with about 5-ish minutes left. And I think we're all sitting there looking around at each other like, all right, how are they going to blow it this time? We've seen the Bearcats throughout Wes Miller's entire tenure really struggle closing games, right? And certainly this season as well, but it's kind of been a theme over the course of the past few years, having an opportunity to win down the stretch, whether they're trying to hold on to a lead or just trying to close the distance or pull away in a tight game, and have failed to do that way more times than they have succeeded. Well, that changed in Lawrence, Kansas over the weekend as they really distanced themselves. Bill Self was burning all of his timeouts. Next thing he knows, he's out of timeouts, and the Bearcats are celebrating on the floor of the Kansas Jayhawks in what is clearly the best win of the Wes Miller era. I understand they knocked off the #2 team in the country at the time earlier in the year in Iowa State. That was at home, and I don't want to say Iowa State's fraudulent because they're still, I believe, a top 5 team rankings-wise in the country. But they were coming off a loss. They didn't feel like the second-best team in the country. Huge win, obviously, and if the Bearcats can backdoor their way in the tournament, that's going to be a huge reason why. But to me, going to Kansas, against all odds, double-digit underdog, right? People calling for Wes's job, rightfully so, and he puts his team together. They go out there and compete and pick up a huge win over the weekend. Now, the question becomes, is that just going to be kind of a shining moment in this season of what has been filled with disappointment for the Cincinnati Bearcats, or can that really catapult them into something special here? And we're going to find out tonight on ESPN2, 7 o'clock, Bearcats and the Red Raiders. I think this is relatively a favorable matchup for Cincinnati. When you go on the road in the Big 12, it's going to be difficult, right? And before Toppin went down, this Texas Tech team had a lot of life when it came to winning the national title. Right, I don't think I'm getting crazy and being hyperbolic when I say that. Healthy JT Toppin and this Texas Tech team, they had some big wins throughout the duration of this year. They would have had all types of life come March and been in a situation where they could take down anybody in the country. Unfortunately for McCaslin and company, all right, they're not really in a spot like that anymore without their best player, but that's just kind of how it is, right? We talked about it with Joe Burrow and the Bengals all the time. When Burrow goes down, yeah, you can put together some wins, hopefully keep your season alive, but you're not hoisting the trophy at the end of the day if you don't have your best player. That's where Texas Tech kind of finds himself at right now. So how are they going to play? They're still learning how to play without Toppin, and their coach, McCaslin, talked about how, well, maybe they can play better basketball now without him because, they'll have more of an idea on how to play with each other offensively. Look, he's got to be as positive as he can, but that's a lot of malarkey right there from the head coach of the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Christian Anderson, to me, this game comes down to guard play, I think, in my opinion. Because if the Texas Tech guards don't shoot it well from the perimeter, I feel pretty good about Cincinnati going down to Lubbock and picking up a big-time win tonight. Christian Anderson, guy's an unbelievable player. I remember watching him last year as a freshman, and it was like, oh, wow, he can really do some stuff out there. He's clearly got a great feel for the game, clearly has great athleticism there as well, but couldn't really shoot the basketball. Well, different story this go-round. He is a complete player. He looks like a future NBA type of player, and he's got the capability to really be their best player here down the stretch. And I think there were some games this year, even when Toppin was out there, when it's like, oh, Christian Anderson, he might be the best player for the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Now, he's not 100%, right? Late February, guys are banged up. That's the nature of the game. It's the nature of the sport. Look at UC. All their guys are banged up. By the way, Sean Abayev, I think there's a chance he could play. I believe Keegan Nicholson said questionable perhaps for that game, the pregame availability report or however they word it in college basketball. But Tech's got to shoot it well from 3 to win. And it comes down to Christian Anderson. It comes down to some of their other guards there as well, and Donovan Atwell and Jalen Petty. Those guys are going to have to shoot the rock for the Texas Tech Red Raiders. And it's going to be interesting to see who defends those guards, and specifically who defends Christian Anderson. I think it's going to be kind of a by-committee basis for Wes Miller and the Cincinnati Bearcats. I think you're going to see some Day Thomas on him. I think you're going to see some Buck Harris on him. And I think you're going to see some Keyshawn Tillery on him as well. We talked about him kind of being the X factor in the win against Kansas. I understand JC shot the ball well from the perimeter. I got people in the comments telling me, I think Celestine was the X factor. Celestine was great in the game. Right, and I said on yesterday's show, if he's shooting 50% from three, you're going to feel pretty good about having chances to win lots of games. But Tillery, what he was able to do as a freshman, as a guy that really had some tough moments, particularly early in the year, when he was out on the floor and just flat out looked lost, to go to Fall Allen when Jizzle was in foul trouble and go out there and hold down the fort, orchestrate the offense, defend, protect the basketball for the most part. Thought he did an excellent job, and I think that's going to earn him some minutes in the game against Texas Tech. Now, what is the identity of UC going to be in tonight's game? We've seen them go down different avenues as they try to create offense throughout the course of the year, right? But to me, you live and die by your front court guys. Right, and I'm talking about Baba Miller, and I'm talking about Mustafa Cham. We finally saw the Mustafa Cham that we had been talking about before the year, right? The expectations of this guy coming in that, hey, this guy can be a really good basketball player. He can be a force down low with some athleticism and a nice soft touch at the rim. You saw that in the game against Kansas. Feed the man. You have a size advantage in this game, right? You had it against Xavier all the way back at the crosstown shootout, and you did not exploit it. You sat there and said, let's get in a three-point shooting contest with Xavier. How'd that work out? Well, you lost again to those boys, all right, at Cintas Center. Don't do that. Throw it into your bigs. Throw it into Cham in the low post. Let Baba orchestrate the offense there as well as a playmaker on the outside, and obviously a big who can post up down low, right? Baba Miller, I think part of the reason UC has trended in the right direction offensively lately. Remember talking earlier in the year, even back to the West Virginia game a couple weeks ago, it's like you're not going to win many games if you're scoring 50 points. It's just not going to happen. Well, they finally started scoring more points. They're in the 80s. How about that? Opportunity to win games when you do that. But Baba Miller shooting the ball, I think, has been the number one reason for this turnaround for the Cincinnati Bearcats. We know what he's capable of as a playmaker. We know what he's capable of down near the rim. This is why NBA prospects were so high on the guy coming in. This is why when he came in from FAU, everyone's like, oh my goodness, Baba Miller, what a player. But when he has the ability to spread the floor out as well and shoot from the outside, that is critical. Shout out to our guy, Keegan Nickerson from Bearcat Journal with this stat. First 21 games, Baba was only shooting 9% from three, right? That's putrid. Can't win like that. And I understand he's not a shoot-first guy or just a perimeter guard type guy. I get that. But 9% from three when the whole, when he came in here, you were sitting there like, well, he's kind of a guy that's a threat from the outside. 9% is not a threat. Well, how about the last three games? 4 of 6 from perimeter, and I think that's really opened up what Baba Miller's been able to do offensively, and you clearly see now that he has a little bit of a stroke there from the outside, that he's clearly Cincinnati's best player, as we said, throughout the entirety of this season, and he's got to play well again in the game tonight. Use the size advantage that you have. Throw it down to Cham. Back some guys up in the low post if you're Baba Miller. And the guard play, if you can just hang in there and defend and not allow guys like Christian Anderson to kill you, guys like Donovan Atwell to kill you, Jalen Petty to kill you, I think you're going to be in a good spot to be hanging around in this game and perhaps pull off another signature win here for Wes Miller, which if he's able to do that, I mean, you got to give him a lot of credit if he gets it done tonight. And as I mentioned when we started this segment, I think a lot of UC fans checked out, rightfully so. Your eyeballs are going to be back on the television set on ESPN2 tonight just to see what the boys are capable of in Lubbock, Texas. Should be a good one. Looking forward to it. UC, Texas Tech, plus 6.5. Public's all over Texas Tech in this spot. I wouldn't mind a little sprinkle on the Bearcats here in this situation. Let's transition a little bit to the Cincinnati Bengals. Talked about this in the open. James Rapine does a tremendous job covering the Cincinnati Bengals. He's all over the place. He's writing, BengalsTalk.com. He's a publisher over there. He's got Enter the Jungle on YouTube, Cincinnati Bengals Talk. He's all over the place, and I would imagine he is at the Combine in Indianapolis right now. And he's always putting out a ton of content. But there's a couple of things over the course of the past 48 hours or so that really have caught my eye and that I really agree with James. sometimes, he's out on Twitter, James is, talking about how the Bengals need to draft a receiver or something. I think part of it's a bit of a troll job. I think part of it he also believes there as well. But beyond when he's doing that, he's usually pretty buttoned up and knows what the heck he's talking about. And he had these 3 moves, and I think he wrote this yesterday, and I totally agree with these 3 moves that need to be made by the Cincinnati Bengals before the legal tampering period begins on March 9th. Folks, it's February 24th. The NFL Combine is underway. They're talking at the podiums right now, right? They're going to be working out. The prospects are going to be working out here soon. It's go time, right? I mean, there was a couple of weeks where, Seahawks won the Super Bowl, and it's just kind of, all right, whatever. Now we're back already for the NFL, and this ball's really got to get rolling, and Cincinnati needs to be doing their due diligence at the NFL Combine. The whole NFL community is there. You talk to the agents, try to get a feel for what these free agents are going to get as far as compensation and contract value. You talk to these other teams, these other GMs, these other personnel people with these organizations. Try to figure out, hey, Trey Hendrickson, right? Everybody knows he's the top free agent. What do you want for him, right? We don't want to just let him walk. Let's get something done where you send us something, we give him to you, and that way you're not in an all-out bidding war with these other teams, right? Because I don't think the list is as long as far as the teams that are interested in Max Crosby, as far as the teams that are interested in Trey Hendrickson, but best believe there's 15-plus teams that would love Trey Hendrickson's services and would be willing to give up either draft compensation, a player, or just a lot of money in free agency should, obviously, Trey Hendrickson walk, and the Bengals just hope to get a comp pick. But here are the 3 things that James Rapien outlined in his piece. Number 1, re-sign Dalton Risner, right? Do it before free agency. Save yourself some cash. This has been a reoccurring theme for us when we talk about the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals, for whatever reason, they don't believe in being proactive. They don't believe in saving money. They don't. I gave them a lot of credit for T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. I celebrated it. You should have celebrated as well if you did not. However, if you would have got it done earlier, it would have saved you a lot of money in the form of multiple players that you could have signed for the extra cash that ended up going to T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. If you wait for free agency to start, then I'm almost of the mind, let him go, right? You could sign him right now. He's on your team, right? You could have signed him at a better number, and then you want to wait. Have him feel out his market, get more money. That makes no sense, especially when the player has already come out and said, hey, I loved it here in Cincinnati. I loved playing with Amarius Mims on the right side. I loved when Joe Burrow was out there. I believe in what Zach Taylor and this coaching staff are capable of. I want to be a Bengal. That was explicitly clear from Dalton Risner. Go out there and bring him back. Are you worried that he's too old and that he's going to fall off a cliff? Fine. We all are too. Give him a 1-year deal. Give him a 2-year deal, right? And I think if you gave him a 1-year deal and paid him, $8 million, I think he'd be in a situation where he'd be like, yeah, I'd do it, right? $6, $7, $8 million for a year, somewhere in there, feels about right for Dalton Risner. Here's a quote from Amarius Mims once the season concluded, or I think it was in the final stages of the regular season as it relates to Dalton Risner. He said, I feel like he's one of the best right guards in the NFL. He's helped my game tremendously. As you can see, once we step down beside each other, each week you can see us getting better and better next to each other. I fully stand behind him. I fully support him. I want him back. I want him to be my right guard next year. I won't rest until he is my right guard next year. Joe Burrow came out and he said, folks, this is the best offensive line that I've played with as a Cincinnati Bengal. You're in a position where you can bring all of those guys back. I think we're all optimistic about what Dylan Fairchild could do at the left guard spot. I think we all love us some Teddy Karras, regardless of maybe him regressing a little bit over the course of the past couple of years. He's getting older. It happens. I think we're all ecstatic about Amarius Mims, clearly the best pick that Duke Tobin has orchestrated in quite some time, right? Orlando Brown Jr., he's getting paid a lot of money when you break down the stats. At that position, such a valuable position. I would argue the most important position in the National Football League after the quarterback is the left tackle. Was it great? No, but it's one more year, right? He's had good years in the past, and a couple of years ago before he was fighting all the injuries, the leg stuff, really was a great left tackle. There's some hope he can get back to that. Doesn't really move very well, but he's a big guy, and he holds up for the most part against pass pro. Sometimes it's easy to get right around him, but I think at the end of the day, is he a perfect left tackle? No. But are you going to have perfect players on your offense when you're paying guys like Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins? No, you're not. The basis of me saying all that, you have something that you know works, right? These guys aren't just going to fall off a cliff. Are they getting older, some of them? Reisner and Karras? Absolutely. But one more year with the same unit, right? We talk about the run it back mindset all the time. Yeah, run it back on offense until you can't run it back anymore. It's the defense that needs all the attention. Don't let this thing go into free agency with Dalton Reisner. Don't do it, right? I was surprised that The Athletic had him so high up on the list. But when you play with an offensive line that played really well, and you play with a good quarterback who's getting rid of the football like Joe Burrow was towards the end of the year, and that line really was holding up for the most part with Joe Flacco, your value's going to go up. Understand that this is a guy in Dalton Reisner that was sitting on his couch that the Bengals scooped up right before that Week 1 game against Cleveland, and boom, injury to Patrick. He's in the game, right? And he's kind of your guy from there. They went with Rivers at one point, so it's not like he started every single game, but once they had an identity there on the offensive line, certainly once Joe Burrow came back, that was going to be their guy, and Rivers went back to the bench. Is there something there with Rivers? Maybe, right? You took him in the 5th round. He hung in there. Wasn't great, but he hung in there and was playable, I would say, during his time with the Cincinnati Bengals last year. What's that going to look like for Dalton Reisner? Can you get him back with this team? Don't wait. That number just goes up. You get in bidding wars with other teams, and that's done, right? So if they don't get this thing done before free agency, my mindset all of a sudden switches to, you know what? Don't. Move on. Find a different guy, right? Because you're just going to end up paying too much for him. I don't understand why Dalton Reisner, that deal has not been done now. Get it done. You got it done with JD last week. Get it done with Dalton Reisner. Number 2, tag and trade. Talked about it a lot. Trey Hendrickson, get you an asset. I'm not going to beat this into the ground too much here, but you're at the NFL Combine this week. As I mentioned when we started this segment, you're looking around talking to these other teams. Hey, we got a guy, Trey Hendrickson. All right, we're kind of done with him, but, we're not just going to let him walk here. I know that if we tag him, you'll give us something, right? You might not give us Max Crosby, but you'll give us something. You'll give us a draft pick. You'll give us maybe a player, which we'll talk about in a second. Do your due diligence. Get something from Trey Hendrickson. Is it the easiest thing in the world to orchestrate a tag and trade? No. There's a reason why there isn't multiple tag and trades each and every year. But if there was ever a perfect time to do it, if you're the Cincinnati Bengals, it would be now. There's people that are much smarter than me that are involved with this process. But to me, I don't think the risk is crazy, right? I don't think that if you tagged him, Trey would just say, oh, I'm signing it. And then you're like, oh, shoot, what did we just do, right? I think there would be an understanding between the two that if you tag him, that you're not playing here in Cincinnati. We are moving you, right? And there's going to be a team out there that is interested in him. What did Duke Tobin say at the end of the year? Pass rush is king. Everybody in the National Football League operates with that same mindset. You should be able, I am 99.999% sure that if you tagged him, you would be able to move him for an asset in 2026, whether it be a player or a draft pick. I don't care about 27 compensation. I don't. Oh, you want to wait around? It might hamper you in free agency, and you're like, well, we can't sign this guy because we got to make sure that we lose or we don't sign as many guys as we lose, so we don't mess up this 27 comp pick. Win now mode, baby. Figure it out now. Get an asset in 26. Tag and trade him in complete alignment here with James Rapien. We'll revisit this in a second when we talk about a potential player the Cincinnati Bengals could bring in a tag and trade situation with Trey Hendrickson. Finally, last thing from James Rapien, something that we have not discussed at length on this show, which I think is worth mentioning. Re-sign Tyson Anderson. Couple of reasons why I think you need to. If you remember, I think this was, 22 when they drafted him out of Toledo, 5th round, if I'm not mistaken. They moved up a couple of spots in the draft actually to get him. And he was a player that had great athleticism at Toledo, and I remember being particularly excited when Cincinnati drafted him. Then he really had some injury issues early. Injury knocked him out, caused him to miss the entirety of his rookie year. But apparently he was showing promise in some of the offseason stuff. And then year 2, he played like 7 or 8 games and was great on special teams, then got hurt again. So injuries have kind of slowed him down a little bit. And I do think there is a negative narrative surrounding Tyson Anderson a little bit now that really isn't warranted. For example, past couple of years, since Jesse Bates has walked out the door. The safety play, obviously, for Cincinnati has stunk. And we've all been sitting there going, these guys stink. Geno Stone's horrible. Nick Scott's horrible. Why can't we put Tyson Anderson out there and see what he can do? And the Bengals staff did not do it. They refused to do it. Then at the end of this year, final few games, I don't have the numbers exactly right in front of me, they said, you know what? Here we go. Let's do it. And they put him out there, and it wasn't good, right? That's okay. I'm not saying give him a 3 or 4 year deal where you're paying him a ton of money. Just another year, $1.5 million, boom, special teams ace. The reason why I am so gung-ho about bringing Tyson Anderson back, we know now he can't be a starting safety in this league. We know that. And when he's out there rotationally as a safety, you don't feel great either. You see teams in the NFL this day and age devalue special teams. And I think that is a huge mistake. Some of the best teams in this sport do it, and it bit them in the rear end this past year, a la the Los Angeles Rams. And you see it oftentimes from offensive-minded head coaches. I feel like special teams, like, yeah, it's called special teams, but that to me kind of ties into defense, right? For example, Nick Saban was always buttoned up on special teams, despite the fact he couldn't recruit a kicker for the longest time, right? Bill Belichick, very buttoned up on special teams. John Harbaugh's a special teams guy. Obviously, he had Tucker for a while, but he was always very buttoned up on special teams. These 49ers and Rams teams of the world, they really struggle on special teams, and it has cost them multiple games. And it cost, arguably, the Los Angeles Rams the Super Bowl this past year. I'm not in the business of devaluing special teams, right? The Bengals, for the most part, when I look at the past decade or so, have been solid on special teams. Have the past few years been perfect? No, right? But McPherson early in his career, pretty much a lock, obviously, at that kicker spot. And did he have the best end of the year last year? No, but you feel good about the year Evan McPherson had, and you feel good about him coming back as your kicker, right? Kevin Huber was an outstanding punter for the Cincinnati Bengals for a really long time. Clark Harris, the long snapper, he was here forever. He did tremendous work. Obviously, those guys are out the door now, and you have new guys in, William Wagner and, of course, Ryan Rico, who I'm hard on Ryan Rico, but he's got all the tools to be a really good punter in this league. Now, sometimes does he love just kicking it 90 yards through the end zone, and you're like, bro, have a little bit of touch that doesn't do us any good. You got to flip the field, not just show off how big your leg is. Yes, we know that. We understand that. But I have confidence in Ryan Rico. And from a coverage perspective, right, Darren Simmons, there's a reason why he's been in place as long as he has, right? This is a Marvin guy. This guy's been here forever, right? And there's a reason why Zach wants him to be here and wants him to continue to be here, because he's really good at his job as a special teams coordinator. Put pieces in place, value special teams, bring Tyson Anderson back, right? You don't want to find yourself in a spot the Rams found themselves in. The 49ers and Kyle Shanahan continue to mess this up. Zach Taylor, of course, is an offensive-minded guy, and I think he literally, when it comes to special teams, he's like, Darren, all right, you got it. Take care of it. And I think that's a good decision for Zach to make. He doesn't need to micromanage that. Darren Simmons knows what he's doing, but give him some personnel. You're not going to break the bank to bring back Tyson Anderson. You don't want to give him a sizable deal because, oh, you might have to play safety. If he's out there playing safety, that's not good. But don't devalue special teams, right? The rest of your special teams is going to be backups and guys that maybe are UDFAs or guys that are day 3 picks, right? That unit's going to look completely different. Bring your ace back. Have your best player on special teams back on the field for the Cincinnati Bengals. That clearly is Tyson Anderson. I think it's a great point by Rapine, something we haven't really touched on a ton here at the show. Bring back Tyson Anderson. I think that's the right call for the Cincinnati Bengals. All right, couple more things on the Bengals as we progress here on today's show. There was a trade proposal that James Rapine also made. And again, sometimes he's out there talking about adding receivers, and I'm just like, James, what are you doing? Like, I get it, but this isn't Madden. This is real life. The trade he mentions is for a receiver, but I actually would be all for it. Sign me up. When we talk about a Trey Hendrickson tag and trade, the narrative around it has been 2026 third-round pick, 2026 fourth-round pick, maybe in a perfect world second-round pick. I would not count on that. I think it's pretty much either a third, a fourth, or a fifth-round pick, which, by the way, sign me up for any one of those. Would you rather have a third than a fifth? No kidding. But would you rather have a fifth than a comp in 27? Yes, in my opinion. But also, there is a world where you could move Trey Hendrickson and get back a player in return. There is a team, again, lots of teams that are interested in Trey Hendrickson's services, one of which being the Indianapolis Colts. And whenever a Bengal leaves that played on the team when Lou Anarumo his money, but I think he would like to go to Indianapolis and play for Lou once again and play on a team that they completely imploded down the stretch, completely fell apart. But if Daniel Jones can come back, they probably think in their mind that there's a world where they make the playoffs. But I question whether Trey Hendrickson really cares about winning games or not, to be completely honest with you. But that marriage would make some sense. Now, the Colts, they just gave up 2 first-round picks for a corner, which we laughed at them at the trade deadline and said, what in the world are you doing? And unfortunately for them, we didn't really get to see if it worked out or not because Sauce basically got hurt immediately. Significant injury. They rolled the dice. I can respect taking big swings, right? That's what we sit here and bang the table for the Reds and the Bengals, right? Just do something. It doesn't have to work out, but just show us you care. Take a swing. The Colts took one. They swung and missed. An injury happened. I understand that. But the point is, they're not going to be in a spot where they want to give up more draft picks. They want to hold on to their picks. They probably want to try to get some of those picks back. Good luck getting the first rounders back, but they want to stockpile some picks a little bit here. Chris Ballard and company in Indianapolis. How about Josh Downs? Had 2 repeat mentions, and the more I think about it, the more I like it. I believe it is the final year of Downs' rookie contract, right? So you only get him for 1 year, and he would be your wide receiver 3, and that is an immediate upgrade from Yoshi. I have been, for the most part, a Yoshi defender. I think it looks a heck of a lot different when he's out there with 9 versus when he's out there with 16 or 6, right? When Joe Burrow's out there, clearly him and Yoshi have a good rapport, and they play successful, winning football. He's a tough dude. He's taken some shots over the middle, some seam routes, some in cuts. You know, there was often times where it's like Yoshi, 2 catches for 20 yards, but one of them was a first down, and he got absolutely shellacked on the play, right? Is he going to be a part of this offense long term? I don't think so. I think he's going to be back 1 year for the Cincinnati Bengals, play out his rookie contract. They took him, in the 6th round out of Princeton, and then he'll probably move on to another football team. Well, you could kind of expedite that departure if you bring in Downs, and then you have Yoshi as a 4, which, again, I think in the NFL, most people would probably view him as a 4. It looks a heck of a lot better when you have Joe Burrow, but if you put him in Arizona, right, he's like, he probably looks like a 4 out there, if we're being completely honest. But Downs is a versatile player. You can line him up close to the line of scrimmage, line him up in the slot. You can line him up on the outside. Smaller guy. He's quick. He's twitchy. I think he would fit in great with this team. There's some special teams value potentially that you could tap into there as well. Wide receiver 3, you could say is a sneaky need. I'm not in a spot where I would dedicate a resource towards it or pay some guy in free agency, right? But in a situation where it's a tag and trade with Trey Hendrickson, yeah, sign me up. Absolutely sign me up for that, because I think the reason why I have that mindset is because I think, in my heart, that Yoshi's good enough. This offense, the pieces around him, like, he's good enough to be a contributor. Like, it's not like you have to fill that void in 27, yeah, but in 26, just keep Yoshi out there. He's been available, right? It's not like the guy gets hurt. And, roll with that group. You've had success with them, clean up the defense, and you're good to go. But am I completely bent out of shape if you address him? If you address it early in the draft, yeah. But in a spot where you tag and trade for a guy like Josh Downs, who, by the way, maybe you're drafting his brother at number 10 overall. Some interesting stuff from Daniel Jeremiah, which we are about to get to. But I bring this up for the reason of saying, open your eyes and open your mind to the idea that a tag and trade doesn't necessarily just have to involve a draft pick, right? It could be a player that comes back in return that is ready to go right here, right now. Preferably a guy on a rookie deal, preferably with a year or 2 more than what Josh Downs has. But it doesn't necessarily have to be a draft pick, right? Shoot. Could be an interior offensive lineman. Could be a wide receiver, that wide receiver 3. Could be a piece on defense there as well. And honestly, that seems like more of an intriguing option when you talk about the Cincinnati Bengals and their struggles at the NFL draft. How about you bring in a guy where it's like, okay, you've seen some NFL tape from him. Maybe he's not a perfect player. Obviously, they're not going to trade a perfect player away in this situation, but has some upside, has some potential. You've seen it on tape. You feel like he can fit into your scheme and your system and your culture well. Go out and get him. Right? Maybe we'll talk about some more options for Cincinnati over the course of this week and into next before this tag deadline, of course, which is coming up for Cincinnati. They got to make their mind up pretty quickly on this stuff for Trey Hendrickson. Yeah, March 2nd. So we talk about the legal tampering period for free agency. That's March 9th. March 2nd. You got about a week here. Less than a week, right? Because only 28 days in February. So, yeah, you got to get a move on, Aaron. You better be doing your due diligence over the course of the next few days at the NFL Combine. But open your mind to the idea of potentially trading for a player as opposed to a draft pick in a tag and trade situation for Trey Hendrickson. All right, I want to go through some of these players. For Daniel Jeremiah, does a great job. NFL Combine. That coverage is going to be on the NFL Network. They do it every year. Rich Eisen and Daniel Jeremiah. Is it, riveting television? No, but it just kind of allows you to learn a little bit more about these guys, right? Even a college football nut like me, it's like, I'm not watching these guys every single Saturday. I watched them play a few games. Caleb Downs, I watched basically every single game, but it helps you get a little bit more information on some of these guys. But it's interesting to me how some guys are like, well, this guy's one of the best players in the draft, but then he goes outside the top 10, right? Depending on the position, obviously, in which he plays. If you're an elite quarterback, you're going early. But if you're a safety or a running back, which we've got 2 elite ones in this class, maybe you go a little bit later. So I want to go through a couple of noteworthy takeaways here before we get into this nightmare scenario from Joe Goodberry here. Got 20 minutes or so left on the show. Number 1, Mendoza. We've beat it into the ground. We don't need to say anything more other than the fact that understand that he's not Trevor Lawrence. Understand that he's not Joe Burrow. Understand that he's not Andrew Luck, right? He's got some holes to his game. Played really good down the stretch, right? But the sack numbers are a little bit concerning, I would say. Not full Justin Fields, but pretty concerning, I would say, for some of the sack stuff. But Jeremiah's got love at 2, which I think is a good thing, obviously, for the Cincinnati Bengals. If he goes to a team, Cleveland's not going to take him, but, Kansas City, kind of the first one that comes to mind. Maybe Washington at 7, but pretty confident they'll go defense. Maybe, Tennessee at 4. It feels like Bob Sala will go defense there as well. I think Kansas City probably makes the most sense. But point being, he's one of the best players, if not the best player in this draft. I think Mendoza, you say, is 1, but then it's, to me, Love or Downs who the next best prospect is, and they're going to go a little bit later in the draft because of the positions in which they play. So, as we've talked about a lot on the show, if you're a Bengals fan, your fingers crossed, nobody's going to take Ty Simpson top 10. By the way, I don't think you can wager on this yet, but Ty Simpson's going in the first round. Right, he will be picked in the first round of the NFL draft. But you hope the tackles go. You hope Carnell Tate goes. Shoot, maybe Jordan Tyson or a guy like Mekhi Lemon go. But Love should be gone in the top 10. But there's going to be people that if he's sitting there at 10 are going to go, oh, Jeremiah Love, Chase Brown, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. Don't do it if you're the Cincinnati Bengals, as fun as that might seem in your brain. 3, David Bailey. Becoming pretty evident that he's going to be gone for Cincinnati. The production was through the roof. The versatility was through the roof. He's good against the run. He's got the size. Great, heck of a player. Not going to be there, I don't think, at 10. Arvell Reese at 4. Kind of reminds you a little bit of Jalen Walker, who went in the first round last year. It's a comp from Jeremiah, which I completely agree with. Has the versatility to line up in different spots. Might slide from 2, but doesn't seem like he's definitely not going to slide to 10. But I thought it was kind of a foregone conclusion that he would be going to the Jets. Maybe not at this point. Sonny at 5. I've been banging the table here for Sonny Styles. And he's, if you can get one of the edge guys, if one of those guys fall, I don't know. Right? We keep talking about this situation. We'll see on draft night if Bain, Bailey, or Reese, one of those guys fall to 10. But I think there's a real world where Sonny's there. Right? And I know you guys out there are a little bit concerned. Oh, you just took a linebacker. This isn't your average linebacker in Sonny Styles. And you Ohio State people, remember, he was a safety to start his career in Columbus, and then he made the transition to linebacker, added some weight. So he is a much better athlete than most of these other linebackers. Like, you want to put him next to Barrett Carter. Like, they are 2 different worlds of talent, right? Sonny Styles and Barrett Carter. He's outstanding in coverage. He will lock up a running back or a tight end, right? That is very valuable. Barrett Carter's not doing that. Demetrius Knight probably not doing that either. So I understand there's some scar tissue there, taking a linebacker, but if Downs is gone and the edge rushers are gone, Sonny Styles is a heck of a pick for the Cincinnati Bengals at number 10. Open up your mind to it. Go watch the tape, turn it on. He was a stud. And the Indiana game, which you Buckeye fans don't want to watch that again. But if you want to watch elite linebacker play, go watch that game again. Sonny Styles was elite in that Big Ten championship. One of course, the Ohio State Buckeyes lost, which kind of funny. We're doing these prospects from Daniel Jeremiah, and they got Buckeyes all over this top 10. You would think they would have won a postseason game. Didn't end up happening. Shout out Ryan Day. Reuben Bain Jr. at number 6. Production's there. It's through the roof. I guess there's a world where he can become available, considering the lack of arm length, I guess people are worried about. To me, it's like I get it for like an offensive lineman like Will Campbell. That's kind of a red flag there if you're an offensive lineman. But if you're an edge rusher that had the success in which he had, and, Miami played in the ACC, obviously not elite competition, but they played some elite competition throughout the course of the playoffs, and he still produced. So that would tell me that he's capable of being a top 10 pick and got great speed, just a bulldog. Again, a guy at Cincinnati would love to have in their building. Carnell Tate comes in at 7. Again, you're hoping he goes, whether it be the Giants or the Browns. I think those two make the most sense. Maybe the Titans have an opportunity to take him, but feels like they'll probably go defense. That to me is kind of fascinating what the Giants do, because that feels like either a Carnell Tate or a Caleb Downs, where you're picking one of the Buckeyes. It's just which one are you picking? Delane at 8. Been a Delane guy for a while. You just know he's going to come in and play good football, right? And if he's available at 10 and your other guys are gone, he becomes a really good player. I was surprised that Jeremiah had Downs all the way down at 9. I think he's a little bit scared's not the right word, but a little bit concerned at the lack of elite athleticism he has. I don't get it, right? Because it's not like he's me out there, right? He is a very, very good athlete. Is he a freak athlete? No, but Shamar Stewart is, and he's not good at football. So, it's a problem. Caleb Downs can do it all. We've talked about it. Line him up in multiple different spots. Leader of your defense, can orchestrate it. I would like to see him be a punt returner in the National Football League. Ryan Day and Ohio State went away from it. I do not know why, because he's electric back there as a punt returner. Be interested to know if he does that, dips his toe into that water a little bit at the professional level. But, as we've talked about, if he's there, you take him. Mekhi Lemon, this one's interesting. There's a world, and now we'll kind of start to tie into this nightmare situation here before we get into some of these other prospects. There's a world where all your guys are gone, and you're sitting there at number 10, and in your mind, the best decision probably would be to trade back. But in the situation that Goodberry proposed, that is not an opportunity. So let's just roll through this real quick with what Joe Goodberry, friend of the show, put out on Twitter. Mendoza, Vegas 1. Bailey, Jets 2. Reese, Cardinals 3. Bain, Titans 4. Downs, Giants 5. Tate, Cleveland 6. Styles, Washington 7. Delane 8. New Orleans. Love 9, Kansas City, which that is full nightmare situation. If you're the Cincinnati Bengals, you're going, oh my goodness. Then all you people out there saying, oh, you should have tanked. Then you're all laughing at guys like me who said, absolutely not. You try to win some games. But that is nightmare stuff. Worst case scenario. I'll go out and say it ain't happening. But am I a little bit worried in the back of my mind that maybe something like that could happen? I'd say so. So then your decision at number 10 comes down to, well, both tackles are available. Do you take them? Again, I've come on the show. I've been open, honest. I'm not an offensive line guru, right? I don't sit here and watch Maui Noah and Fano from Utah. I know that Maui Noah in the college football playoff run, that right side for Carson Beck was protected. That I do know. So those two become options for you. Do you want to draft your tackle of the future? Right? I think if you make a move to get one of those guys, that the writing is on the wall for Amarius Mims to make the jump to left tackle, which I'm open to. But at the same time, do you want to mess with something that's working really well? Clearly, he can play right tackle. I don't know. It's a question, right? Do you try one of these rookies at left tackle after they played the entirety of their college career for the most part at right tackle? Doesn't seem like the best decision to make. I still wouldn't go tackle in this spot. I really wouldn't, right? I would be looking to trade back, but as Goodberry says, that is not an option in this situation, which I think is realistic, by the way, because it's probably not going to be an option for Cincinnati. Can you salvage a guy that you're going to reach on, right? There is not a defensive player in this situation at number 10 that would not be a reach. Every one of these guys would be a reach. So which one do you reach on becomes the question. Peter Woods is a name that a lot of people have talked about. I don't get it. I don't understand it. The hype was there a couple of years ago. Well documented, Dane Brugler at The Athletic. Others viewed him as the number 1 overall prospect going into this season in college football, and now he's like in the 30s. The production wasn't good. The Clemson team stunk. Massive red flag, in my opinion. Stay away, stay away, stay away. At number 10. Jermod McCoy, I think, is a good player, but there's a couple of things that stand out to me. Number 1, he missed the entirety of last year because he blew out his knee. Is that a guy that you want to bank on to come in here and play immediately for this football team? I think that would probably be a mistake. The other memory I have of Jermod McCoy is him playing Ohio State in the shoe in a playoff a couple of years ago and getting cooked by Jeremiah Smith. Now, Jeremiah Smith is 1 of 1, and when he comes out, obviously, after this next year at Ohio State, he's going to be a top 5 pick. Maybe even he goes first. As crazy as that is to say out loud for a receiver, but I do think there's a world where that is a possibility. But an injury that caused you to miss the entire year, in our last image of you is Jeremiah Smith giving you to work. To me, that doesn't make any sense. It does not make any sense. Cassius Howe. Upsides there. Do you want to take another edge from Texas A&M with limited production at number 10? No. Keldrick Falk. I've been very anti-Keldrick Falk. That, to me, is the Shamar Stewart pick 2.0. You go with another corner, Avion Terrell. The Bengals had that infatuation with Clemson, as we've documented on the show. He's not a top 10 pick. I think he's probably the 3rd corner after Delane and McCoy. The other Tennessee kid's pretty good, too. No, is the answer to the question. K-Mac, who I think would be a good pick. I think not at 10. Caden McDonald for Ohio State, if you traded back to like 25 and then took him there, that would be great. But in this exercise, you're not trading back. Here's the guy I would take at this spot, and I've been asked about him a little bit on social media, and his name is Emmanuel McNeil Warren. And he played in the MAC at Toledo and played safety, and the dude is an absolute dog, right? I get he played in the MAC. Some of you people are scared about the small school stuff. Typically, I fall into that category as well. Go watch him. I was watching him for about 30 minutes this morning. Guy flies around, good in coverage, runs up to the line of scrimmage, hits guys. When they hit guys, they stop moving, right? That's what we talk about with Caleb Downs. Would that be a bit of a reach to take a kid out of Toledo at number 10 as a safety? Maybe, but in my opinion, that would be the move to make. I absolutely love this kid. He's going to go in the 1st round. I would be shocked if he fell into the 2nd round. And would it be a bit of a stretch and a little aggressive to take him? Yeah, but in this nightmare situation and you're not trading back, you got to get a little bit aggressive. And that is the guy that I would get aggressive for. Emmanuel McNeil Warren, safety out of Toledo. Check him out. Highlights, pretty incredible stuff. Another guy could be Mekhi Lemon, but I got no interest in that. I think Mekhi Lemon's a good prospect. Kind of has the body of a running back, but is a receiver and runs around like a receiver. Won the Biletnikoff, of course. Don't even tempt yourself if you're Cincinnati Bengals. Don't even sit down and talk to him. Don't even interview him, right? No wide receivers are allowed to be interviewed with the idea of them being taken at number 10 overall. Can't happen. Check out Emmanuel McNeil Warren. Really impressed with what I saw from him out of Toledo. And, by the way, let's see. He's ranked as the number 15 prospect by Daniel Jeremiah. So Jeremiah is very high on him as well. Says he has Pro Bowl potential, which, as we've talked about, we're going to stop using that as kind of a benchmark for guys if Shedeur Sanders is going to be a member of the Pro Bowl team. But basically saying he can be one of the best safeties in the National Football League. I agree. There's been guys that have been taken early on in the MAC, like Khalil Mack out of Buffalo. Hall of Famer, right? I would say. Defensive Player of the Year, list goes on and on and on. I'm not saying he's the next Khalil Mack, but guy can play. Let's just really quickly see if anything else stands out. Jordan Tyson, 17. It'll be interesting. Seems like, before, like right when the season was ending, it was like, okay, he's going to be wide receiver 2, and now I think Mekhi Lemon has gathered a little bit of momentum there. Denzel Boston's another name to keep an eye on from Washington. I personally would take Omar Cooper over him, the Indiana kid. Obviously, he had some more big moments, which he's more of a recognizable guy. Not to say Boston's not a good player. Mesidor has him at 20. Maybe that's a guy you reach on, right? To me, I just don't know if he's a first-round pick, which people will laugh at that, because I think he's definitely going to go in the first round. But he's, I guess, a name at 10 you could monitor there in that nightmare situation. I think I would take him over Cassius Howe and Keldrick Folk there as well in that situation. But just some stuff to keep an eye on there as it relates to the draft. Keep an eye on that safety out of Toledo. And, trade backs are very much a possibility for Cincinnati. I wouldn't anticipate them doing that. I would bet your money on them taking somebody at 10, meaning they're not trading up into the top 9, and they're probably not going to trade back either. So they're going to try to fall in love with someone. Hopefully it's not a reach. Hopefully it's a guy like Caleb Downs, Sonny Styles, Ruben Bain Jr., Marvell Reese, David Bailey, if we want to dream a little bit there. But do think it is worth mentioning. If that situation does unfold, the tackles are not getting picked in the top 9, and only one receiver or no receivers getting picked. All the defenders are going off the board. Could be a sticky situation for the Cincinnati Bengals, but it's hard to imagine Cleveland going defense, right? Really hard to imagine them going defense. And, I don't study these offensive linemen, but when you're a top tackle, the top tackle goes in the top 10, right? Somebody's going to take him in the top 10, you would think. But ultimately, we'll see come April here at the NFL draft in a couple of months. Before we get out of here, on today's show, do want to bring up the Los Angeles Lakers a little bit as we do a little NBA conversation to round out today's show. If you just take a look at the standings, you're like, 3, 4, 5 seed in the West. Good chance that they can avoid the play-in. It's the Lakers. It's a big brand. It's LeBron. It's Luka. They're in a spot where they can make some noise in the West. Don't think so. Really don't think so. They lost 22 games so far this year to this point, 19 of which have been blowouts, right? And I've got some questions on Luka Doncic. Clearly, he doesn't want to be there. If it were up to him, not to say he's, ticked off to be a Laker, but if it were up to him, he obviously would still be in Dallas, right? That's the team that drafted him. He kind of grew up there, at least stateside, right? Went to shoot the stinking NBA Finals with them there as well. And even when they went to the finals, I questioned whether or not Luka Doncic could be the best player on a team that wins the NBA Finals. And I'm starting to put myself in a situation where I say, you know what, I don't think so. I don't know if he is. You look at some of the other great players in the game right now. I think pretty clearly the best 2 players, and Wembanyama is about to enter this conversation, but the 2 best players in the game right now are SGA and Jokic, right? So those are the 2 top guys for MVP. They've exchanged MVPs, obviously, over the course of the past few years. Jokic just won a bunch. Both are NBA champions there as well. Different styles of game, obviously, different styles of leadership there as well. But I think they're clearly, to me, the top 2 players in the league, and Wembanyama eventually is going to be there if he's not already. And Cade Cunningham, by the way, deserves a little bit of love for MVP. I think he's probably 3rd or 4th, or he better be in the top 5 somewhere along those lines. But Luka, he has too many bad games, right? He has too many games where, again, if you look at the box score, you're like, oh, it's not that bad of a game. But when you look at what is expected of him, what he needs to do on the floor, what his ceiling is as a player, I think what makes him so unique is he has an aspect to his game that is unguardable, right? Shea is very much, he's not going to really shoot it a ton from 3, not to say that he can't do it, right? And Jokic obviously can make the 3, but he's, more of a make plays down near the rim, mid-range stuff, and facilitate. The thing that Luka has that is so special is that step-back 3. And when it's going in, it's unguardable because we know what he can do from a playmaking perspective. We know what the mid-range looks like. Well documented, the pace in which he plays with, how he slows it down, and he just dictates what all other 9 guys are doing on the floor. But when he has that step-back 3 falling, unstoppable. But when it's not falling, right, and you see some of the shooting numbers go down, whether it be from the outside or from the perimeter, right, the floor goes down a little bit with him as well. And that's kind of the biggest difference to me when you look at a guy like Shea and a guy like Joker and a guy like Luka, as the floor for Luka is so much lower than the other 2 guys, albeit the ceiling arguably is higher with those 2 guys. And also I think some of these teams in the NBA really take on the identity of their star player. And I've been on this for a while with Luka. Some of these international guys are like that. They are so moody, and they want to get into a conversation and a disagreement with the ref every time down the floor, right? And it's hard to watch. It is very, very hard to watch, right? I grew up watching Kobe Bryant, all right? That guy went out there and competed for 48 minutes, and he was locked in. He wasn't sitting there crying at the ref. You kidding me? Right? As the NBA has gone on, that has become more and more of a problem. And when you watch Luka Doncic play, and this was his whole career, by the way, even in Dallas, it is just Oh, it's tough. It's tough. Like, I get it, right? A couple times a game, you want to say something to the ref, you're frustrated, you didn't get a foul call, but every time that you miss a shot, right, you got to say something. It's just exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting. And he kind of wilts in some spots where they face adversity. Again, what did I say? 19 of the 22 losses are by blowouts, right? And if you're the leader of the team and you're going to get all upset and moody with the officials when things aren't going your way, all the guys that are following you are going to do the same, right? And the Lakers, the reason why they've had as many wins as they've had, a couple of reasons. One, they beat up on the worst teams in the league. Deserve credit for that, right? That's something we talk about with the Bengals and the Reds. It's like when you're playing teams that you're better than and clearly better than, you better take care of business. If you're the Reds, you better win the series. And if you're the Bengals, you better win the game, right? That's why the Lakers are out of the play-in as things sit here on February 24th, because they take care of the worst teams in the National Basketball Association. But when they play some of the top teams in the league, they get boat raced. And candidly, it is not close. So it will be interesting to see what they do going forward. I think they're going to roll with Luka. I mean, how can he not, right? I was just hard on Luka there, but he's one of the best players in the NBA, and he's going to be the face of the Lakers going forward. But you got to add some size, right, because they don't have enough size, and you got to find a way to be better in transition as well, because the Lakers are the best half-court offense in the NBA, but all other areas of, offense in this league, they're not really buttoned up. Right, and the LeBron stuff is fascinating. We'll see what he does going forward. It is funny to me that all the conversation, and I'm guilty of doing it right here, banging on the Lakers, where if you just look at the standings, it's like they're fine. They're in a fine spot. Do you expect them to compete with the likes of OKC and San Antonio? No, but stay out of the play-in, you feel like you have a good chance, but it just doesn't feel like that's the case with the Lakers. I think their record is inflated just because they're beating up on the bad teams, and when they face really good competition, blows up in their face. I would like them to take on the identity of J.J. Redick and not Luka. And J.J. Redick loves Luka, as he should, because he's one of the best players in the sport. But J.J. Redick is a feisty competitor that will go out there and compete each and every night as if it's a playoff game. You don't really see that from his team. And I believe a lot in J.J. Redick. I think he's a great coach. I think he can win a championship as a head coach. People were kind of banging on that move when Pelinka decided to bring him in. I think it was a great move, great decision. But you got to figure out some guys with some tenacity that you can put around Luka, and you got to feel like you can be better in transition, and obviously better on defense there as well. Because defense for Luka is just kind of a hobby at this point. He'll try when he wants to. LeBron can defend well in spurts, but he's not obviously the same defender he once was. But I think as constructed, the Lakers aren't really a force in the West, and it's up to Pelinka and those guys to figure out how they can construct a roster around Luka that can be competitive, because Luka went to the finals once with Dallas, but the talent in which he has, there was no reason why he shouldn't have gone on more runs by now. And also, he's 27 years old, and it looks like he's kind of like lost a step. He doesn't dunk at all anymore. Like, you used to get a dunk every few games from Luka in Dallas. Now he has 2 or 3 all year or something bizarre. So I don't know if he's hitting the beer too hard or whatnot, but it seems like he's lost a step a little athleticism wise as well. Not giving Nico Harrison credit at all, but I don't know if he should be going into his prime, right? 27, obviously, played as a kid overseas, so he came into the league really young, but he should be kind of entering his prime here, and it doesn't really seem like that's the case. So lots of questions in Los Angeles, lots of stuff they got to get figured out, but clearly, in my opinion, they're not a team that's a threat to win the NBA Finals here at this point. That'll do it for this edition of the show. Appreciate everybody being here, hanging out with us on a Tuesday. We will have more Bengals coverage tomorrow. Looking forward to hearing what Zach and Duke have to say this afternoon. I think 3:30-ish, a couple of hours, they will take the podium in Indianapolis at the NFL Scouting Combine. Looking forward to that. Great area college basketball tonight. Rooting for the Red Hawks. You get the Red Hawks up on your main screen, ESPN+, and you get a little side screen action there for the Cincinnati Bearcats on ESPN2. 10.5 is the margin in Eastern Michigan. 6.5 is the margin in Lubbock, Texas. Dayton also has a big game tonight against St. Louis. By the way, our social media team will have you covered on X. If you're out and about or doing something else, can't tap into these games, pull up Chatterbox Sports, follow us, Cbox Sports, and all the big-time highlights you will see on our Twitter page. Big shout-out to all of our guys, all of our interns helping us out there on that front with obviously Nick Kirby leading the charge there. But appreciate everyone as always. We'll be back tomorrow. Reds baseball in a couple hours, 3:05 first pitch. Until tomorrow, take care, everybody.